fabulous Friday. It's fabulous because, look, I'm in Iowa, of all places. I'm not in my hometown today. And all week I've been thinking about this podcast because I have Eloise and Sean Garney on my show today. This is going to be an outstanding show because I met Eloise a few years ago and she is a star. She's very inspirational and she's paving the way for the future of young female entrepreneurs. And so without further ado, I want to introduce them and they're going to tell you who they are and what they're passionate about. Eloise, take it away.
Okay, I'm Eloise, if you didn't hear from her already. And something that I'm passionate about is doing my schoolwork and, well, not that much, but
yeah,
and doing art in any form and any kind because I really enjoy it and I think it helps me.
That's outstanding. I love that. You love art. And one thing that Eloise likes to do is bake, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Sean, why don't you tell everyone who you are and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, thanks, Gina. Sean Garney. I am mostly just the dad of Eloise, but I also do other things. I am passionate about trucks and trucking. That's always been a lifelong passion, but I'm also a big connoisseur of music, and I love to bake with my daughter and, dream big and all of that, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Always dreaming big. And it starts, you can start at any age, right, Eloise? You can start when you're little. I remember a few years ago, you were doing a podcast or thinking about doing a show, and you can start at any age. You can be, as long as you're alive, you can dream and want to inspire people. And so one thing that I love, and I love to have people on my show that inspire others and really inspire. They think about what inspires them and inspires them to learn. So Eloise, tell the audience what inspires you to learn.
The thing that inspires me to learn is the prospect of growing up and having a stable life and community. And I think that school can really help with all of that.
I love that. Having a community. That is outstanding. What do you think the value? I know this isn't something that I've asked you before. What's the value of having a community, do you think?
The value of having a community is when you're in a time of need, people can help you, and so you don't have to face all those challenges alone.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. Nobody needs to live this life and be lonely and experience it by themselves. Having a community that has a lot of wisdom, Eloise. Sean, what for you? What inspires you to learn?
Oh boy. Well, I a few things. First of all, I think learning is like a core tenet of our family. We spend a lot of time around the dinner table talking about current events or exploring the world. We have a policy that all questions deserve honest answers, regardless of the question, which sometimes puts my wife and I in a very difficult situation, having to answer difficult questions, but it's a core tenet of who we are. I mean, I think we really push our kids. It's why we put our kids in Spanish immersion school, right?
Wow.
To open up new pathways for learning in their brain. So I think it's a core tenet of our family. And what inspires, one of the first things that is inspired us, even as a family, to learn was just the world, like the physical world. Eloise, show that book that we pulled out here.
What's this? What are you sharing with me right now? This is a surprise. Oh.
Yeah. So we have a lot of books like this, and Eloise is a voracious reader. Like, I don't even know when she reads because it seems like she's always on her screen.
Wow.
But all these books, so we were just cleaning out her bookshelf, which was an overgrown mess. And she put this one out as like a book. Hey, I've read it already. I don't need it.
Yeah.
What should I do with it? And I said, we're going to keep that one because this is a book you'll give to your kids. Because it's called Why, and it just inspired in Eloise this thing about why. In fact, it was a research component for her very first was it the first podcast
First
episode?
one.
Wow.
About in her podcast called What's and Whys. It's about learning and education, and so she used this book almost as the inspiration for that first podcast. So she
Wow, that's
learned about
outstanding.
DNA.
Eloise,
and-
what page are you showing? What's that? Is that your favorite why? What is that?
This is a why about why our eyes are blue or brown, and why people see in 3D, why do you cry and blink. Basically
Wow.
everything about the eye that you could possibly ever want to know.
Wow, that's outstanding. I think, one thing that you both bring up as a family is being honest and supporting each other and answering questions, right? Because a lot of times you might be afraid or you might have a concern and you might not feel comfortable going to your family and asking. And I think this is like an important message that if you have something that's on your mind, be okay to ask the question, even if it's not with your family. Ask a friend. Ask a teacher. Who else, Eloise, if you had a question and didn't have your family, who do you think you could go to?
My grandparents, aunts and uncles, and for sure my teachers.
Awesome. I love that. Absolutely. It's so important to have a community. So that thing that you were just reading to me about the eye, it really gets to this idea of authentic learning. And one of the research studies I'm doing this year is asking adults and just anybody, children, what authentic learning looks like to them. And when you're in school, Eloise, and you think about, wow, that was really meaningful to me, what do you think authentic learning looks like to you?
Learning things that you love and that you think that could affect your life forever. Like if you are learning about, let's say, Black history, and you realize that you're really interested in that and you want to keep learning about it, then I feel like that's very authentic to yourself, and that you should learn things that are authentic to you.
And then maybe do a podcast on it.
Maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sean, what does authentic learning look like to you?
Yeah. I love this question. When I met my wife, she offered me kind of a learning metaphor, which has really stuck with me. And it's all about building a foundation of knowledge, right? So authentic learning to me is when you have enough sort of base knowledge that you can begin asking and answering those next level questions, right? And my wife would say that we're growing a tree.
Yes.
And that trunk is the foundation, and each branch is a new opportunity to learn something new and to hang that new knowledge off of, so you can sort of catch it all together. So that's kind of how next level learning, I feel like, is authentic. When it comes from inside, like Eloise said about the interest in Black history or whatever, and there's an intrinsic desire to know more about that thing, and then just having enough base knowledge to hang those off of, I think it's great.
I love that analogy, Sean. One thing I think about often is I think about asking yourself the question is, what sets your soul on fire? Really, what is it that's deep inside of you that lights that fire, that makes you be what you want to be? And I'm sure we all have that. And so I think about this idea of when I've learned something in my life that really left an impact on me. Maybe it set your soul on fire. Maybe it had a foundational impact on the way you see the world. Eloise, can you tell the community maybe a time that you learned something that really had an impact on you? Maybe it was baking and you forgot an egg.
I think something that I learned that really affected my life and the life of everybody around me is when I started to read, when I learned how to read.
Wow.
Occasionally for the good, occasionally for the worse, because I would look over my dad's shoulders and read his text messages.
Uh-oh.
Which probably wasn't the greatest thing.
Uh-oh. Sean, don't be doing those text messages.
But it also really helped me grow as a learner, as a reader, and that I think that it really affected how I see the world, because when I started to learn, I think I started to learn other words that are more describing about how I feel and how the world around me is.
I want to add some context to that moment.
Yeah, you remember
because this was a moment for us where we were actually pretty worried that Eloise had some some challenges that were
Okay.
preventing her from reading. She was
Yeah.
in Spanish immersion, right, which is a no English school environment,
Mhm.
and things just weren't coming. And my sister's a school psychologist, so I even flew her out here, and I said, give
Wow.
Eloise all the intelligence tests
Tests.
or whatever else,
Yeah.
and tell us what we need to do. And my sister was like, you're crazy. Like, her scores
Uh-huh.
are off the charts. Just wait. And then her reading came in both languages, like a
Wow.
flood. Like, it was
Mhm.
over the course of like 3 weeks, it felt like, where all of a sudden she was reading. And, it was like that. Right after that, she picked up a book, and now she's got a very expensive book habit.
Wow, that's outstanding. Eloise, do you remember the moment? I don't know if you can remember this or not, but that you remember your first thing that you read, or the first thing that left an impact on you that you read, besides your dad's text, of course.
I think the first thing that I learned that really affected my life, like in general, was so the first thing I obviously read were those scholastic books that are like
Oh, yes.
Cat Ate the Hat or whatever. So, and they're all from my grandmother, who I assume used them for all the other cousins before me. So
Mhm.
I think that instead of just being like a random old book, it was a book that helped everybody in my family learn how to read, from probably my
Oh,
oldest cousin to my brother.
that's outstanding. That community of reading and having that love and togetherness really helped you. That's outstanding.
Well, how
So,
many school teachers do you suppose are in this family? I mean, at one point, all of Shelley's brothers and sisters minus one, so that's 3 of 4 were teachers, and their spouses,
wow. Wow.
and both of her parents were educators.
Wow. Well,
So,
Eloise, let me ask you this. Like, since you have these experiences, has there ever been anyone that you can think of, or maybe even in your own life, that you maybe have had a hurdle or a challenge and you were able to overcome it, and how you overcame it? Or maybe you helped someone else overcome a hurdle in their own life and you were able to help them overcome, because people struggle. Not everybody has the support system that you have, right? And so, yeah, what do you think about that?
So that actually reminds me of a thing that happens quite often in math class.
Oh,
So I have this friend, and she sits almost right next to me in math class. And
mhm.
whenever the teacher is done explaining whatever we're learning, then she'll ask me, "Hey, Eloise, will you help me with this?" Because most of the time I pay really, really close attention in math, so I can learn whatever we're learning, because it's all new. Um, so I will go over there and I will help her, and then most of the time it'll click for her, and then she'll just keep on going and soaring, and then she'll even surpass me sometimes.
Wow, that's
don't let
amazing.
that happen again.
Yeah, having really good support systems is important. And when she gets stuck, you're there to kind of help her over and give her encouragement and tell her, you can do this. It's great. You can make it through. That's awesome. Sean, what about you? Has there been a time that you had a hurdle you had to overcome, or maybe you helped someone overcome that hurdle that they thought maybe would be impossible?
Yeah. So this is boy, 20 plus years ago. When I was in high school, my mom went back to get her associate's degree in accounting,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
despite not being good at math in any stretch.
Mm-hmm.
She decided accounting was her way, and she struggled through it. And you'd find her at the kitchen table, kind of trying to figure it out. And she'd be working on concepts that I was working on in math class at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so sitting down with her and just sort of trying to help work through some of those challenges. And she ultimately graduated with her associate's degree. And I'm not in any stretch saying that she couldn't have done it without me. She could have. My sister was there helping out a lot, but that was sort of a transformative moment where it felt really important to help somebody you love so much. Sort of.
Aw, I love that. I love that. I think it's so important that we look at all those people around us and see what they're struggling with and what they may need, and give them that, and really support them to overcome that. And for those of you that are listening, if you don't have a support system, there are people all around you that can help you overcome hurdles, such as your teachers or maybe somebody you work with. There's a lot of support. And even if you feel a connection to someone that you might not know, more than that, they'll probably want to help you. So definitely it's important to connect with those people around you. Eloise, it kind of like lends itself to this idea of, I have people on social media reach out to me and tell me, you know what, Gina, I've just lost my passion to learn. And I don't really know what to do. And do you have any advice for me? And so I'm talking about adults, but I'm sure there's children and young adults and just everyone that maybe be struggling. So if you came across someone that told you, Eloise, I've really lost my passion to learn, what advice would you give to that person?
I would probably tell them to discover what they're passionate about and see if they can go farther beyond whatever boundaries that school, like let's say they're passionate about art, but they don't really teach that in their school. That I can help them figure out that that is their passion, and then find alternative ways to learn about whatever they're learning.
Got it. That's awesome. So really helping them kind of dig deep and look inside and find that thing that makes them happy, huh?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and this find alternative ways to learn, I think is sometimes people get stuck because they're like, I just can't read these paragraphs anymore. I just can't do this other thing anymore. Well, what about instead? We were talking about this earlier today, and you were talking about sort of science experiments and how finding a new way to learn about a topic can really inspire that passion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to really find alternate ways. Eloise, how do you learn best? What are some ways that you think that you feel like if you were to have a preference to learn, how would you describe that?
Actually, in school recently, we're learning about what type of learners we are. So I recently discovered that I was a tactile learner. So I learned best by doing crafts and like
Making messes mostly.
Right. I want to talk about some of those messes in a minute.
so like holding stuff while the teacher's explaining things and just basically fidgeting around, and that helps me learn best. So I think personally that I benefit more from like the projects that we do rather than sitting down and listening to the teacher talk.
Exactly. I love that. Hands on. What about for you, Sean?
Well, Gina, one of the things that when I was thinking about this podcast that really struck me was a presentation you made at the Safety Management Council of the American Trucking Associations. I think we were in like Indianapolis or
Oh yeah.
And you talked about that peer-to-peer case study. And just this idea that like we can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
And we can trust each other and we can have fun while we do it. Right. And I think everybody wants to help each other. And so as I think about sort of my journey over time, like even in my workday, I do a lot of just like picking the phone up and calling people and talking things over because I know that that's going to help sort of solidify those items in my catalog. So I think peer-to-peer learning is a great learning method, and I can recall moments in my life where that was really effective. I just didn't know what to call it. You know, I was like, all right, they give you a textbook, read the textbook.
Right.
Good luck, Right. So just even learning that there are new methods out there, there are new strategies out there, I think is huge.
I think so too. And one of the reasons I wanted Eloise on my podcast is because I wanted to highlight her as a young entrepreneur. You can be an entrepreneur at any age. So Eloise, tell the audience a little bit about some of your entrepreneurial adventures that you've done. I know of a few, but tell them kind of what got you started or what got you interested in those projects that you were doing and kind of where you're at with them.
Well, so I feel like at a very young age, I wanted to start something and just be able to keep it on going. Like, during the pandemic, me and my dad, we really like to bake. So we decided that we wanted to start a mini business where we kind of like give baking goods to people, called Home Cafe. And obviously we have big dreams for it and hoping out that it really works.
Yes.
And another entrepreneur thing, I guess, is my podcast that I have. I think so far it has 4 episodes.
Yes.
All about things that I find interesting, with including an unreleased one that about Girl Scouts, which I think is really cool.
That's really cool. I love that.
What are some of the other topics that you've talked about there?
Other topics that I've talked about is obviously how your eyes work and all that stuff.
Yeah.
About the railroad, the
Underground
Railroad.
Yes.
Black History Month.
Yes.
And
COVID. We talked about COVID.
That's a good one.
So I actually raised $300.
Oh yeah.
To give to a local organization that is trying to save our rivers.
That's outstanding, Eloise. Wait, hold on a second. How did you raise $300?
Well, I had a tie-dye business where I made tie-dye and sold them online.
Yeah.
And then I saved up all that money to give to that organization.
And
then we made a podcast.
Yeah.
And we made a podcast. Look, one of the things that Pat Dorsett, who I met at the Inc. 5000 event, one of his key messages is how gratitude can really get to your heart and make you happy. And if you're feeling depressed or you're in a tough moment and you want to change your mindset, he was in the Navy SEALs. He underwent some brutal training. And when you're in those situations, what can get you through? And you know what he thought, and I know, is gratitude. And what you just expressed, right? Gratitude is the key of unlocking happiness in our world. And what you did, you probably felt a lot of happiness and gratitude. I'm assuming, because you even telling the story, I saw how your face lit up. And that's the thing. All the money in the world, might not make you happy, but what makes you happy is doing things for other people. So that is a beautiful story. I love that. Thank you so much, Eloise. Eloise and Sean, awesome people, awesome family, awesome entrepreneurs. What message each of you can give to our audience as a parting words for my I Love Learning podcast today? Eloise, you go first.
Do what inspires you and learn about it until you can't learn anymore, and then pursue that.
Awesome. I love that. Sean, final words.
Don't stop. Always ask questions. There's always another layer of understanding. Don't stop.
Awesome. Don't stop. Well, thank you all for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you. It's great to see you.